Welcome back to part 2 of reading the Elements of Eloquence. Now, last time we had finished the preface. For those of you who are new to this series, this is The Elements of Eloquence by Mark Forsyth, and I really recommend you go back and watch the video with the preface because it explains what this book is, because I need to keep the video as short as I can. So, I'm going to dive straight into Chapter 1, Alliteration. Let us begin with something we know Shakespeare stole, simply so that we can see what a wonderful thief he was. When Shakespeare decided to write the tragedy of Antony and Cleopatra, he, of course, needed a history book from which to work. The standard work on the subject was Plutarch's Lives of the Noble Greeks and Romans, but Plutarch wrote in Greek, and as Shakespeare's friend Ben Jonson later pointed out, "Thou hadst small Latin and less Greek." Despite years at Stratford Grammar School learning pretty much nothing but the classics, Shakespeare could never be bothered with foreign languages. He always used translations. So he got a hold of the standard English translation of Plutarch, which had been written by a chap called Thomas North and published in 1579. We know that this is the version Shakespeare used because you can sometimes see him using the same word that North used, and sometimes pairs of words. But when Shakespeare got to the big speech of the whole play, when he really needed some poetry, when he wanted true greatness, when he wanted to describe the moment that Antony saw Cleopatra on the barge and fell in love with her, he just found the relevant paragraph in North and copied out of it almost word for word. Almost word for word. Here's North. She disdained to set forward otherwise, but to take her barge in the river Cydnus, the poop whereof was of gold, the sails of purple, and the oars of silver, which kept stroke in the rowing after the sound of the music of flutes, hautboys, citherns, viols, and such other instruments as they played up in the barge. Also, I apologize if I mispronounce the names of those instruments. I'm doing my best. And here's Shakespeare. The barge she sat in, like a burnished throne, burned on the water. The poop was beaten gold, purple the sails, and so perfumed that the winds were lovesick with them. The oars were silver, which to the tune of flutes kept stroke, and made the water which they beat to follow faster, as amorous of their strokes. The thing about this is that it's definitely half stolen. There is no possible way that Shakespeare didn't have North open on his desk when he was writing, but also Shakespeare made little changes. That means that we can actually watch Shakespeare working. We can peep back 400 years and see that the greatest writer who ever lived, scribbling away. We can see how he did it, and it's really pretty bloody simple. Okay, when things like that pop in, I want to read it in British accent, and I can't. I'm just not that good at it. Anyway, all he did was add some alliteration. Nobody knows why we love to hear words that begin with the same letter, but we do, and Shakespeare knew it. So he picked the word barge and worked from there. Barge begins with a B, so Shakespeare sat back and said to himself, "The barge she sat in was like a..." And then, though I can't prove this, he said, "burnished throne." He jotted that down. And then he decided to do another. The barge she sat in like a burnished throne, burned? It burned on the water. And the poop was gold? Not anymore. The poop was beaten gold. And yes, I know I'm saying the word poop a lot. It's a word for a particular part of a ship. Go look it up. I'm not doing that. I'm on a roll anyway. It was beaten gold. That's 4 B's in 2 lines. Although, that's enough to be getting on with. Shakespeare could have gotten carried away and written something like, "The barge she basked in like a burnished boat, burned by the banks, the back was beaten brass." But that would just be silly. Of course, Shakespeare did write like that sometimes. There's a bit in A Midsummer Night's Dream that goes, "Whereat with bloody blameful blade, he bravely broached his boiling bloody breast." But there he was taking the mickey out of poets who use alliteration but don't know where to stop. Again, with a taking the mickey. It would be a really, really bad Doctor Who impression, and I'm not doing that. Or I guess it would be more of a Rose Tyler. Anyway. No, Shakespeare wasn't going to put any more B's in. He was going to work on the P's. North's original had the poop whereof was of gold, the sails of purple. That's 2 P's already. So Shakespeare decided that the sails would be perfumed. I'm giving myself psychic damage with the way I'm doing the pa. It was worse with the buzz because I just took a geology course where in order for us to remember the rock basalt, it was basalt. So excuse me if you see me taking psychic damage. It was perfumed. Maybe he stopped to wonder how you would perfume a whole sail, or how you might be able to smell them from the riverbank. The Cydnus was quite wide. Or maybe he didn't. Accuracy is much less important than alliteration. From there on in, Shakespeare was coasting. North had after the sound, so Shakespeare had to the tune. North had a whole orchestra of instruments, flutes, hautboys, citherns, and viols. Shakespeare cut that down to just flutes, because he liked the F. So flutes made the water which they beat to follow faster as amorous of their strokes. So Shakespeare stole, but he did wonderful things with his plunder. He's like somebody who nicks your old socks and then darns them. Upcycling. Shakespeare simply knew that people are suckers for alliteration, and that it's pretty damned easy to make something alliterate, or that it's surprisingly simple to add alliteration. You could spend all day trying to think of some universal truth to set down on paper, and some poets do that. Well, they try to. Shakespeare knew that it's much easier to string together some words beginning with the same letter. It doesn't matter what it's about. It can be the exact depth in the sea to which a chap's corpse has sunk, hardly a matter of universal interest, but if you say, "Full fathom 5 thy father lies," you will be considered the greatest poet who ever lived. Express precisely the same thought in any other way, e.g., "Your father's corpse is 9.144 meters below sea level," and you're just a Coast Guard with some bad news. Any phrase, so long as it alliterates, is memorable and will be believed even if it's a bunch of nonsense. Curiosity, for example, did not kill the cat. There are no widely reported cases of felines dying from being too inquisitive. In fact, the original proverb was not "curiosity killed the cat," which is recorded only from 1921. It was "care killed the cat," and even that one has changed. When the proverb was first recorded, in Shakespeare, actually, although he seems to be just referring to a well-known bit of folk wisdom, care meant sorrow or unhappiness. But by the 20th century, it was care in the sense of too much kindness, something along the lines of a pet that is overfed and pampered. In 100 years' time, it may be something else that does the cat killing. It's a different word for cat here, but I don't trust YouTube, so I am not going to say that. Starts with a P. Anyway, although you can be certain that whatever it is, kindness, consternation, or corruption, it will begin with a C or K. Similarly, there was once an old proverb, "An inch in a miss is as good as an L." Now, because you can't see what I'm reading, I'm going to spell this out. So an inch here is spelled Y-N-C-H-E, and miss is M-I-S-S-E, and an L, E-L-L. Continuing. An L being an old unit of measurement of 1.1 miles. So the L was changed to a mile, and then the inch was dropped entirely because it didn't begin with M. So we were left with a miss is as good as a mile, which, if you think about it, doesn't really make sense anymore. But who needs sense when you have alliteration? Nobody has ever thrown a baby out with the bathwater, nor is there anything particularly right about rain. Even when something does make a bit of sense, it's usually obvious why the comparison was picked. It takes 2 to tango, but it takes 2 to waltz as well. There are whole hogs, but why not pigs? Bright as a button, cool as a cucumber, dead as a doornail. In fact, Dickens made this point rather better than I at the opening of A Christmas Carol. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge that there is what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined, myself, to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Except that Dickens knew full well why it is doornails that are dead. Dickens was a writer, and as a writer he knew that alliteration is the simplest way to turn a memorable phrase. This was, after all, the guy who had written Nicholas Nickleby, the Pickwick Papers, full title, the posthumous papers of the Pickwick Club, and indeed a Christmas Carol. He knew which side his bread was buttered, as had those who came before him, like Jane Austen, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, and those who came after him, Where's Wally? So popular is alliteration that in the 1960s it actually made a grab for political power. In the 1960s, a vast radical youth movement began campaigning to do things for the sole reason that they began with the same letter. Ban the bomb, burn your bra, power to the people. For a moment there, it seemed as though alliteration would change the world. But then the spirit of idealism faded, and those who had manned the barricades went off and got jobs in marketing. They stopped telling people to ban the bombs and started telling them to put a tiger in your tank. Check out the chintz and use Access Your Flexible Friend, or perhaps PayPal. And all because the lady loves milk tray. I think that's another reference, but I don't actually recognize that one. It's enough to get your goat. Oh, this is the first I've seen this. It's a footnote. Right after get your goat, there's a little one. And at the bottom it says, first recorded 1910 with no explanation at all. Alliteration can be brief and obvious. A short, sharp shock. Or it can be long and subtle. John Keats once wrote 14 lines of F's and S's, and it was beautiful. Let's see if that's true. Deep in the shady sadness of a vale, far sunken from the healthy breath of morn, far from the fiery noon and the eve's one star, sat gray-haired Saturn, quiet as a stone, still as the silence around about his lair. Forest on forest hung about his head, like cloud on cloud. No stir of air was there, not so much life as on a summer's day, robs not one light seed from the feathered grass. But where the dead leaf fell, there it did rest. A stream went voiceless by, still deadened more by the reason of his fallen divinity. Spreading a shade, the naiad mid her reeds pressed her cold finger closer to her lips. Not bad, not bad. Whereas at almost the same time, Thomas de Quincey, famous junkie and prose stylist, got himself all muddled up over this sentence. At present, after exchanging a few parting words and a few final or farewells with my faithful female agent. Did I just have a stroke? A few final or farewells with my faithful female agent. Jeez. So muddled was he that he decided to add a footnote apologizing for his paromion. Paroemion. That's the technical name for excessive alliteration. There's a technical name for that, apparently. The footnote went, some people are irritated or even fancy themselves insulted by overt acts of alliteration, as many people are by puns. On their account, let me say that although there are here 8 separate F's in less than half a sentence, this is to be held as pure accident. In fact, at one time there were 9 F's in the original cast of the sentence until I, in pity of the affronted people, substituted female agent for female friend. Agent seems a strange substitute for friend, but he probably had to do it as he couldn't change farewells. It's much too clever to use a word as an adjective and a noun. In fact, the trick has a name. It's called Poloptaton. Oh, and with that it goes right into chapter 2, Poloptaton. I'm going to end the video here, although I'll probably continue reading because this is, as I said, I haven't read this in a very long time, even though I have a bookmark still in there. But it is very interesting, at least it is to me, and I hope it is to you as well. And I hope that I will well, maybe not see you because I can't see you through a camera, but I hope you do come back and join me for the next chapter. Have a good day.